Welcome to the Around the NFL broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. My name is Dan Hansis. I'm joined in a studio filled with some heroes. Greg Rosenthal, Mark Sessler, fancy digs for fancy boys.
I know. I kind of thought when the pandemic ended, they'd be like, oh, that your little show was nice. Like, we're not going to let you in the studios, but here we are.
We may not be out of the woods yet on that point, but they've given us 2 hours. But, I mean, it's been months and months of just our little heads inside of boxes staring at each other. So this is surreal, but also rewarding.
Is anybody else struggling like with the eye contact thing?
It's a little too much.
I mean, the new old blue eyes right there, they're popping.
Hey, you got that. The Around the NFL podcast 4 times a week during the season, including a Thursday night preview podcast, Thursday night football recap, Thursday preview podcast. You get everything you need. And you also get everything you need on this program because we will take you around the NFL, true to the name of the show, all 32 teams covered. Let us start. Let's get to work here in our new studio with the NFC West. And I'll tee you up, Greg Rosenthal.
Ooh, the Seattle Seahawks last week were almost devastatingly boring. Like, isn't every Seahawks game supposed to come down to the end and be crazy? They gave Seahawks Twitter whatever they wanted. Shane Waldron, ton of motion, ton of play action. Like, everything we've been looking for out of a Seahawks offense. Like, who are these Seahawks? Is this going to be the new boring, like, ruthlessly efficient Seahawks?
I think, number one, this was stamp of approval scenario for Russell Wilson. He wanted Shane Waldron. It looks a lot obviously like Rams concepts. Like you said, they were second in the league in play action. And maybe the thing that we couldn't expect from Seattle this year was to not be like they've been forever. It's under Pete Carroll, where every game comes down to the end, it's wild, and they kind of controlled the script from beginning to end.
Is it a bad thing to be ruthlessly efficient in anything in life?
Doesn't seem
maybe like marriage or something.
The Patriots were. I mean, that's kind of what you think of.
That annoyed you to some extent, Dan.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, I would love if my team, the Jets, were ruthlessly efficient at anything. But I see what you're saying, Greg, because you look at last year's season, of course, with Seattle, was a tale of 2 seasons where they were fun as hell, 1 through 8, and then they were a bit of a mess in the last half. So you kind of I guess you wanted to see week 1, the deep, sexy ball from Russ and the shootouts and just fun Seattle. But this might be a more healthy team going forward.
It's what their fans have been looking for. I think we learned a lot this week because if they beat the Titans convincingly at home, then to me that's a different type of Seahawks team. Usually the Seahawks would kind of come back to the pack. They would count on Russell Wilson to make a touchdown at the end of the game, and it's a crazy game.
It's getting the ball out quicker, too, than he ever has before. So I think this, if Wilson likes it, we're good.
Wilson likes it. He handpicked the offensive coordinator. It's kind of under the radar. Like the whole Russell Wilson, I maybe didn't want to be there this year, but then you let me choose the offensive coordinator.
Smart.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what you should do for
What did you guys think of Russ
quarterbacks.
on the Eli Payton cast on
I
Monday
thought he did
night?
a great job. He broke away from his
smart.
tape study. I mean, I watched the whole thing. I thought I learned a lot from him. So.
You're obsessed with that show. All right,
Yeah.
we're on a 2-minute clock. That's an aggressive buzzer. Mark, get us going on the Rams.
All right, the Rams. After 40 years in the Detroit desert, Matthew Stafford, to me, vibes like an MVP candidate, a Super Bowl MVP candidate. Sean McVay is totally thrilled.
Where did this Sessler
I'm
come
just
from?
saying, it changes everything I think about the Rams, but I have to ask you because McVay is a little bit of a lovable bro, and Stafford looks healthier than ever and is a little bit of a lovable bro. How many kind of bro hugs were enacted post-game during this week between them? I'm giving the over-under at 19. They love each other.
I'll bang the over. I'll say 20. I would say they sat down and they did they binged on Entourage season 1. And they were just like, hey, I'm a total turtle. You're a drama. They were all sorts of bro hugging going on. But Mark, I can't abide by this. You can't spend an entire offseason telling us that.
Offseason, it's been 4 years.
Yeah, but this specifically, the Matthew Stafford thing, everyone else is saying, or at least on this podcast, oh, this is going to be fun, this could work, this is exciting, and you're poo-pooing it, and then they play one game, and now you're like, Super Bowl MVP,
Well,
Matt Stafford. Come on now,
people
Sessler.
change, they adjust, they evolve. I would point to what's happening here as an evolution on my part.
I think it was about that tweet. It was really one tweet. Mark had this whole thing for years that it was like, oh, we're going to be working for the Rams. We're going to be in a studio right next to the Rams. I'm worried about this conflict of interest. And then he gets one tweet from the GM's wife, our old colleague Kara Henderson-Sneed, who says, you didn't even pick us to win the division, bro. And now he's on the network saying, oh, yeah, they're going to be the Super Bowl MVP.
People are warming up to where I'm at. They're warming up to, and Greg, at any chance, Greg will take my career and just run it under a bus whenever he can on this topic.
Let me say this.
It's not accurate.
It was a perfect week 1 for the Rams. In prime time, in your building, which is like a stone's throw from here, by the way, filled with Rams fans. The offense looked great. The defense looked great. I'm all in. We're going to talk power rankings a little bit, which I do for this here network. I have them number 3. I think they're a true Super Bowl contender. And the Colts, not a bad matchup for them either, because the Colts are figuring some stuff out right now. We're going to get to that a little bit later. Mark, we're going to stick with you. Tell us about the Redbirds.
All right, the Cardinals, because I think our podcast especially, viewed the Cardinals in this 17-game schedule as the most classic 8-1 type team. I think I had a bad taste in my mouth after last season, the way it ended. Do you feel differently about the Cliff Kingsbury experience today after what we saw on Sunday, that absolute coup d'etat over the Titans?
What made it a coup d'etat exactly?
Well, power shift. That's a coup d'etat. A violent power shift. We thought about this. You were telling us a week ago the Titans were the team to watch, high-flying, and the Cardinals were this sort of boring operation. We think the opposite today.
I mean, it was unbelievable. What a performance by the Cardinals. Now, do I feel differently? Yeah, because you win in Tennessee. That's a nice win. But also the fact that the Titans didn't show up. It's one of those week 1 things where I take a step back and I say, great win. You see there's a ceiling here that is much higher than maybe any of us realize if Kyler Murray takes that step and is an MVP level guy. And Chandler Jones isn't going to have 5 sacks every week, but this is a really good front 7 that can get after a quarterback too. I think there's potential here, but I still think they're the 4th best team in the division right now.
It's the best division in football. I feel differently because of the defense. You shaped it as Cliff Kingsbury, and we'll see. I mean, Kyler Murray made plays in that game that no one could make. Can you do that each and every week? I feel different because of Vance Joseph. I think Vance Joseph has been underrated as a defensive coordinator. He had them flying around. I was worried about the secondary coming into the season. Malcolm Butler retires, and suddenly you have Byron Murphy out there making plays. Budda Baker's been great for a long time. Robert Alford, who hasn't played in a couple years, is playing well. And the way that they can scheme with those tall linebackers and with Chandler Jones and with J.J. Watt, to me, they are going to be good on both sides of the ball, and they haven't been that way in the last few years.
And they're set up well, too. And they have the Vikings coming to their building. The way the schedule is set up, if you can win a tough road game in week 1, usually you have a nice setup in week 2. The Vikings aren't a pushover, but they played poorly in week 1. The Cardinals can get off.
You got that buzzer.
You
got that buzzer.
Gotta move.
You need to be more aggressive.
I gotta move. Up next, Greg on the Niners.
I'm looking at the Niners, and I'm thinking do the Eagles have the recipe to beat them? I think the 49ers look great in week 1, but it ended on such a down note with Jason Verrett going out with a torn ACL, with Raheem Mostert announcing he's out for the season, and then Dre Greenlaw, their good linebacker, is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Then you get an Eagles team I think that's going to be very tough to prepare for. We think of your boy, Kyle Shanahan, as like one of the toughest coaches to prepare for, but I think this Nick Sirianni team in week 2, with a lot of different wrinkles on offense, could be very tough to prepare.
I'm with you. I think a month ago, if you looked at the Eagles in week 2, you thought that's how if we ever lost week 1, we get back into a good place against this Eagles team that had been underrated. But I think a lot of people looked past, the veteran, talented offensive line, a defensive line that's really strong. The fact that we had no idea what Nick Sirianni would do with this offense, but instead Jalen Hurts fits so well into it. I love what they did in week 1, and Jalen Hurts on the ground is such a factor. You see right here, he did this 5 or 6 times on a couple of continuous drives. Go watch his 2-minute drill before the half. I think he is a better quarterback than people realize. This was an audition season for him. If he plays the way he did last week, you can put a banged-up Niners team on the fence. The Niners have been banged up for like 7 years in a row, it feels like. What's going on there in the water?
I don't know what's happening in the water.
We don't know about the water
there are 3 teams. 3 teams didn't show up in week 1, and let me know if I missed one. Titans, Falcons, Packers. So the Eagles, I give them all the credit in the world for playing well in week 1, but Atlanta obviously is a team that is figuring some things out. This is a great game to really get a vibe of where the Eagles are at, because you know the 49ers are going to be prepared. You know they're going to have better personnel on both sides of the ball, and they have better coaching.
Up front, I don't know. That Eagles offensive line, I think they are one of the only offensive line that could mitigate Nick Bosa, my boy Jordan Mailata, matching up against Bosa and the rest of them running. I think they could.
Greg loves every player that's not from America. Have you ever noticed this?
I'm into the international player pathway program.
Very globalized.
You know? I feel there's a adventurer in Greg. One day he'll just walk the earth.
I don't see that, but I mean, you'd have to convince me of that.
Okay.
Respect the buzzer here.
We are just getting going here on the broadcast. Coming up next, the NFC East. Danny Dimes, there he is. Ooh, we got rookie wide receiver stars. We got veteran wide receiver stars. This is actually maybe a fun division. Maybe. Coming up next on the broadcast. Welcome back to the broadcast. We're rolling through all 32 teams here, and now we get to the NFC East. We had two teams play on Thursday night, but let's start with the other two. Mark, start with the Cowboys.
Here's my question about Dallas. I think a lot of fantasy heads are asking this question. I'm kind of wondering where they drafted Zeke Elliott. Do you think, now listen, the Bucs game is not a great sample size, but do you think we are at a place where we are beyond Zeke Elliott in his prime days, where we're in a, fading towards a different version of Zeke Elliott? Or is that all, are we worrying too much about that?
Yes, I think so. Listen, he did not have a good year last year. Everybody knows that. But to judge him based on a Bucs primetime game week 1 on the road where he had to pass a lot, I think it's fair to ask the question, but my answer is if you say yes unequivocally, you're taking a bridge too far.
I thought he looked good last week.
Too far, I think so.
Am I the only one that watched him and was like, oh, Zeke's quick again? Zeke has movement. He was playing literally the greatest rush defense of all time from a year ago, and so they didn't pick up yards, but I thought his movement skills, his body looks great, and he blocked well. Not that they're playing him to block. Generally, you don't pay running backs, though, because they're at their best in their first contract. And that's why you don't pay running backs what they paid Zeke Elliott. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I think we'll see a better Zeke Elliott this year.
Well, I think they're going to have to use more. But, I mean, they can do anything they want through the air. So the days of, this whole offense is based around Zeke Elliott feels
But you could have it both ways. That's why the Cowboys, and we talk about what do you take out of week 1, I still feel kind of similar about Dallas as I did before week 1, that they're going to score a lot of points and they're going to struggle to get stops. However, I do think Zeke has a chance to be Zeke again. And if you put that version of their running game with this passing game that's going to the next level, that could be the difference in the division.
I was encouraged that they didn't use Zeke. That's the difference.
Well, they did the right thing.
Between Kellen Moore and the old coaching staff when it was Jason Garrett. He would be like, sorry, Kellen, I know you got all these fancy Boise State plays, but you got to keep running into the wall even when it's not working. That's what you should do, is not run Zeke Elliott against the Bucs.
I do like Tony Pollard, too. I think we could see more and more of him as the season goes along.
Right.
Buzzer.
Yeah, a little Pollard pop at the end there.
I knew I had 4 seconds to work with.
What are we good? Now we're just going to give Zeke Elliott 6 carries a game because we don't believe in passing offense and balance.
Against the run, not against a run
with
heavy.
the running game. And Tony Pollard had 4 good games last year. Can we just?
Dan's not into it.
Can we just calm down, Greg?
Message
Eagles.
received.
I love this Eagles team. I love them so much. I spent the whole 49ers discussion talking about them. And I love this coach and his handshake. Did you see the Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts handshake last week? Because to me, I think it just showed, hey, here's a modern guy. I mean, it wasn't perfectly executed, but they have it going on. Everyone, including Dan, spent all training camp being like, oh, why won't they back Jalen Hurts? Hey, how about the head coach has his own handshake with him? This could heal Philadelphia. It could heal America. I'm loving what Nick Sirianni's putting out.
I think heal America is a little strong, Greg.
We could get behind the Eagles.
I have to be honest, you're the only person in the week since that I've heard really discussing this to this extent. So I don't know if America has quite...
No, that's my job. We're the most popular show in America, and so now I'm giving it to the people.
I mean, there are a lot of lies right now going on with this show, but I will say that the answer is yes. I think it has healed America, and I think going forward, as a country, we're all good. Things are fine now. Listen, I can doubt Jalen Hurts because the Eagles put a lot of heat out there that maybe they didn't believe in him. But that doesn't matter once the games start. And what was that, his 4th career start, 5th start of his career? So if you come out of that game playing that way, I think now you have a sense of optimism around this team. They changed the way I felt about them in 1 week. That's a team that I feel differently about.
In 2021, you have a quarterback that in 4+ starts has 500 yards on the ground, can do everything, is totally diverse, and wreaked havoc on the Falcons. I know it's the Falcons, but I think he's going to do the same thing to all sorts of unsuspecting victims.
I think the handshake signifies to me that, you can get on them for trading for Gardner Minshew and they won't name him the starter. He took all the starters' reps, and they're building an offense that looks like a college offense around his strengths. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you my handshake. That's my handshake with my son. So it's almost like they're family, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni.
You remember, you don't remember, but if you've watched any docs or read books, post WW2, America was like, hey, we're the best. That's it. It's a wrap. That's where we are now.
We're back there.
With Sirianni.
Because of the handshake.
You understand.
You're connecting incredible dots here, but I'm going to go with it.
It's time now that that's been settled, for Fighting Spirit presented by the United States Marine Corps. Let's talk Thursday Night Football. Greg, let's start with the Washington football team. 30-29 win.
How about our guy, Young Turner? That's our nickname for Scott Turner.
Scott
I believe
Turner.
as named by, Michael Irvin on our network?
No, it was Aqib Talib.
Aqib
during
Talib on the broadcast.
yeah.
Great play
Great.
calling. Set up Tyler Heineke for success. My guy, Terry McLaurin, just chewing up James Bradbury, running great routes. Is this Washington team at least going to be fun to watch? Because Taylor Heineke, to me, looks a lot more like Ryan Fitzpatrick than any other quarterback in the league.
They already are fun to watch. I mean, so much more than they used to be. And I think Taylor Heineke, who, I mentioned this story on our Thursday night recap, a year ago he was taking classes, post-college, and had to email his professors and say, I'm not available this week because I'm playing Tom Brady in the wild card game. This guy's got some moxie. He sends powerful emails. I like the way he plays. He's aggressive. He's quick. I just think there's something about him. Yes, Ron Rivera called him a gunslinger. Nobody is a gunslinger in real life anymore. Nobody is walking around with a shotgun doing that business. But Taylor Heineke, to me, is a really enjoyable to watch quarterback.
I don't think
your
anyone
knowledge
thinks
of
that.
gunslingers is so little. Gunslingers don't use shotguns.
You've just told us that
6
all
shooters,
America
bro.
is healed because of a handshake. I think there's zero credibility
Let's
on
get
this
off the
operation.
gun talk. I really liked Tyler Heineke in this game, and it made me think Taylor Heineke. It made me think that Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's way too early, obviously, because there's a lot of football to be played, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was out an extended period of time. He could be out for the year, but you wonder if he will get that job back. Because Taylor Heineke, he's the future here. I know he's 28, but if he's playing well, why would you bring in the 39?
I guess I would point to Ryan Fitzpatrick's career, which until age 37, when he took some Tom Brady juice and got very consistent, you would get 4 or 5 great games, and then you get 4 or 5 rough games. I think it was really telling that Troy Aikman kept saying they're worried about Heineke staying healthy. He's got to make it 8 games, and he's got to make it 8 games playing well.
Yeah, I am worried about the Washington pass rush, by the way. Young and sweaty is supposed to take over the world, but that is 2 straight games where they haven't made an impact. Let's go to the Giants side of things. And yes, we talked about it last night, Mark. I have a ton of Giants fans, friends. You do too.
Yeah.
The text blowing up. And I have a limited amount of sympathy for Giants fans when in my lifetime you've been to 5 Super Bowls, won 4, all of them highly memorable wins, and a poor Jets fan still waiting to go once. At 41 years old. But forget about me. Forget about my situation. That is a painful loss by the Giants, who are 0-2 for the 5th straight year. And to do it in that way, Dexter Lawrence jumping off sides, Darius Slayton dropping that ball, the holding call, which was a little dicey to say the least, Daniel Jones wiping out a huge play, that is a bad loss.
It was a terrible loss, but I think if you look at the performance of Daniel Jones, you could call it the best game he's played as a pro. The cleanest game. I mean, minus some of the gaffes, the errors, the fumbles, the stuff driving people crazy. Are we any closer, though, to riding the Daniel Jones train? Did it change your belief in him, or is this someone that you're hitting the ejector seat on after this season because it's just too frustrating?
Well, I think he's been somewhat underrated his 2 years, just because he's been in such a terrible situation. He's literally the fastest player in the league when he's running in a straight line. Not like a natural runner, but it was nice to use him as
He's the fastest quarterback.
He had the fastest miles per hour, I believe. It might have been quarterback of anyone that played last year on that run where he ended up stumbling. And you could see it last night. He can't make anyone miss. But yes, Jason Garrett, start using him. I was more concerned about their defense. They had a lot of bad luck. I am not panicking about that Giants team. I'm panicking about the vibes. Kadarius Toney, their first-round pick, complaining on Instagram that he's not getting any playing time, and Kenny Galladay's yelling on the sidelines. There's some bad vibes there.
Yeah, that was such a terrible loss because all that stuff comes to the surface when you lose in prime time in that way. And I love Daniel Jones in that game. And I think we're all asking questions about whether he is the guy going forward. If he could stack some of these games up, it's all there. The tools are there, Giants fans.
The speed.
You've had a lot of glory, though, G-Man. All right, coming up next on the broadcast, we move away from the east and to the north. Packers trying to get it together. Lions, buzzsaw time Monday night. Yeeks.
I mean, it's
Up
been
next.
a minute.
Ouch.
Welcome back to the broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. We move on to the NFC North. What's so funny?
Well, just
I don't know.
Like you put it, like, welcome back to the broadcast. It's like you're
It's football.
Little heightened. It's okay.
That's okay.
You're
Broadcasting.
You like to tell us
Welcome.
that you sit in the power seat.
This is
He
the
tells
power-
that to Greg and I before each show. I don't know what that
It's an industry
suggests about
term.
us.
It's called the power chair. It faces the producer. It is nothing to get sensitive about. It's nothing to be self-conscious about. That's just what this
we're at the
chair
children's
is.
table and we just take orders.
You,
That's how
you
this
can go to
works.
Dan's bio on NFL.com right now, and it says he's like a young Chris Berman. Like, he
Right.
wrote that. He wrote that.
I didn't write that, but that is pretty much accurate. The G-Men we
All
just
right.
talked about. Let's move into the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers, and I'll set it up this way. Tell me how this is not going to be on Monday night. Green Bay coming off arguably the most humiliating loss of Aaron Rodgers' career, certainly in the regular season, aren't going to rain a monsoon of fire upon the poor Lions. Mark, how is this game competitive?
I think there's a lot of logic to that because if you're Green Bay, you can't find a better matchup secondary-wise. Jeff Okuda's lost for the Lions. I mean, Jeff Okuda was not exactly starry to begin with. They are young. They're inexperienced. It's a get-right game for the Packers. But here would be my counter-argument real quick. They seem to me like a house divided. I know everyone asks, like, it's just business, the contract stuff. But here's the thing that bugs me. There's got to be a pocket full of people inside that locker room that look at their quarterback and say, this guy's already told us he wants out of here after this season. And so when a week like last year happened...
Wait, you said real quick. So
Well, go ahead, Greg. But you know what? It's on my radar. I'm a little annoyed.
It went over it.
Okay.
The only reason why I don't think it might happen, and ultimately I agree with you, they're likely to rain a monsoon.
Fire.
Monsoon of fire is
please.
coming. That sounded like a Sessler term. Is that the Packers? That everyone assumes that the Packers are going to do that. But if you just watch Week 1, they were giving off like clear Dallas Cowboys 2020 vibes on defense, where they didn't know what was happening. They're like, oh, you got him? Do I have him? Wait, do you got him?
That's not good.
And that's not good. They have this new defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. And then you think of Aaron Rodgers, his timing was just late. I assume it's just a bad game, but he was late on a lot of different throws.
And we've learned that Zadarius Smith is headed to IR. That's a huge scenario for that defense. So
Some bad vibes
Arrow
with
down,
Zadarius
baby.
Smith behind the scenes. Wasn't happy he didn't get the captaincy. That got a lot of pop on our podcast.
All right, well, you guys got to calm down a little bit. 'Cause
House
it's going to be
divided.
42-10, and everybody's going to be like, oh, the Packers are
All right.
fine. But the Zadarius Smith thing is legit. He was murky all summer. He tried to play Sunday, and now, a back's a bad thing to do.
It's been a few years now for him with that back injury.
Mark, Detroit Lions.
Well, I mean, you've already suggested that we shouldn't even discuss the
Monsoon
Lions
of
because
fire!
they're going to be swept away in a natural event. But I would say this: if you go watch that Niners-Lions game, it looked like it was going to be a Titanic blowout, and then the Lions creep back in it. Do you take anything back from that scenario where they kind of fought back? It wasn't the old Lions to me. They're a little bit more spicy. Jared Goff made some good throws down the stretch, or do you just wipe it away because of what we just said
Kind
about
of
the Packers?
easy beat writer lead take on the game, which is not what I'm saying you are doing.
I hope not.
You're a
Not
reductive.
on,
You're a
you know.
reductive
Or even
analyst.
what the Lions beat reporters did, because I didn't study their writings too closely. What I am saying is that when a team is down, 30 points in the fourth quarter in their home opener, the fact that they scored some points in garbage time when the defense was in prevent, I'm sure, and the Niners had just lost their top cornerback, Jason Verrett. Like, am I going to put a ton into that?
Two two-point
No.
conversions. I think just looked a little more angry
they're a
and
football
organized.
I took a few things away from that game. Number one, like, Dan Campbell's aggressive. He's
Right.
going to go for it on fourth down, like that. Number two, like, the Lions crowd, they might get my vote for, like, the number one crowd in the league. They were going nuts when they made a third down stop at 38-17. They love the game. There's a purity and, like, a cynicism at the same time. Like, who is going that crazy when your team's down 21? But Jared Goff's first 24 throws gained 93 yards and had a nasty pick six. And the receivers for the 49ers were wide open, which is kind of what you expect on Monday when the monsoon
I'm just
of
trying
fire
to drum
happens.
up some positivity for the Lions. I mean,
Jared Goff
they're
looked
clearly
professional.
rebuilding. We
He
know
looked
that.
professional.
I believe it was Orioles manager Earl Weaver who said, you want to overlook teams that quote unquote stink, but they all drive Cadillacs. I mean, they're all professional athletes. They all got there to the pinnacle of the sport. So sure, we'll give them a couple lollipops for getting back in the game. But I just
lollipops.
think
Thank you.
it's a bad situation. Good luck to Dan Campbell. They got a long road to go and probably a top 3 draft pick coming up. How about the Chicago Bears? I mean, I don't want to be reductive, but we just got to say it. Earth to Matt Nagy. It's already Justin Fields' time. And I don't want to talk about this anymore. But to not talk about it is to consciously avoid the only thing that matters in Chicago right now, which is you are not a Super Bowl team. Andy Dalton is a perfectly capable bridge quarterback. But what do you use? He's a progress stopper for Justin Fields, who should be developing now, not later, unless there's something we don't know, unless there's some Jamarcus Russell stuff going on.
We know that's not happening.
We gave
That's
you
not
the
the case.
playbook
Yeah.
on a disc, and the disc was actually blank to see if you checked, and then you came back to practice and said, man, playbook looks great, and playbook looks great. But that's not the situation here from what we understand. So what's happening?
Well, they've also said that Justin Fields was ready to run the full playbook for a while now.
What are we doing?
Here's the thing, Allen Robinson. Imagine the quarterbacks Allen Robinson's had to play with in his career. Targeted 11 times last week for 6 receptions and 35 yards. And he was quite annoyed, I think, when he was asked what the situation was and why he isn't being used differently. Well, it's because Andy Dalton is going to throw 1 or 2 killer passes a game that go in the other direction.
But it's not Andy Dalton's fault. It has nothing to do with Andy Dalton being good or bad.
The problem is that Andy
It's bigger
Dalton
than that.
limits your offense. I am tired of acting like this is this person that
Right.
you can do anything with. Justin Fields opens it up at least and makes the Bears interesting. I don't get why they're not
The
pulling the
offensive
trigger.
line limits it. They were giving Dalton 2 seconds, I think, time to throw. It was the lowest one in the league. It's the lowest thing you can do possible. The results of that game, I almost think encourage Nagy to keep doing this because the offensive line looks terrible. And they passed midfield 7 straight times, which you would think that's a great game by the offense. It didn't work out that way. You had 24 first downs. You didn't throw a ball over 15 yards the entire game. So it's painful to watch. But in Matt Nagy's mind, I think he's thinking you play like that against the Bengals and you get some real red rifle ginger man revenge game because there's no revenge game like a Dalton versus the Bengals.
I mean, I'm glad that Andy Dalton gets this game because I've always respected Dalton. This is bigger than Dalton, and I think Bears fans watching right now know exactly what I'm talking about. Greg, Vikings.
Vikings are a team where I just worry about Mike Zimmer. He's been in our life for a while. Remember him? He was an assistant coach in Hard Knocks for the
of course.
Bengals.
Did a nice job
he was
there.
an assistant coach in Hard Knocks for the Cowboys.
Yep.
Now he just seems like the stress of it all is getting to him. I don't know if it's the COVID, if it's his cornerback. He's benched Cam Dantzler, who was his best cornerback a year ago, and he's well, if he wants to play, he's got to play special teams. Meanwhile, his cornerbacks are getting filleted in big plays against the Bengals. His offensive line is not good. I just worry about him.
I think that number one, he's defensive oriented. He cannot stand what happened last year on defense, and he thought they remade it. And then you got all these issues. They had 12 penalties last week. They could not get out of their own way. He's been annoyed all offseason because of the COVID scenario.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes I kind of connect with him in the sense that you just want to disconnect. You want to just get into.
Well, I said it on the podcast this week.
Right.
You're our Mike Zimmer. In a
I
lot
don't
of
know
ways,
if I'm
so-
your Mike Zimmer, but sometimes you
You're
just want to.
you're pretty tired of COVID. I mean, who isn't at this
I'm not.
point? But-
I just think that I get his. You may want to escape sometimes. Just lie in a
do
stream
wanna
and
say
have
this.
nature wash over you, and he can't escape it.
I want to thank you guys for coming around to something I was trying to tell you all summer. That just because we like Mike Zimmer as a defensive coach and just because you got rid of a bunch of players and you changed your personnel on defense doesn't mean immediately week 1 comes and everything's going to be fine.
Wasn't good.
It's a work in progress, and the Cincinnati Bengals, who might actually have a frisky offense, so I don't want to take away what their opponent was able to do. This is going to take time, and oh, by the way, it still may not work.
One little note, this
Tough week
team,
for the
had they
Vikings,
done
that
things a
was.
little differently, I mean, you could have had Kevin Stefanski as your head coach, just throwing that out there, but we'll keep going.
I mean,
with Mike
you
Zimmer.
got your boy. Just be happy. You
I'm-
don't have to
I'm just
dunk. You got your little
suggesting-
Kyle
I'm just
Shanahan
suggesting.
guy with the nice beard. This is a big game, I think. The Vikings are one of those teams I feel like they can't fall to 0-2. Maybe they bounce back this week, but it's a matchup where you just kind of feel like they can't protect Kirk Cousins. Cousins played well last week. I really thought he did, and the offensive line was so bad.
Yet still bland somehow.
We all like Kevin Stefanski, by the way.
Oh yeah,
He's had
great.
one winning season and won a playoff game. Can we? It's not Bill Walsh. Let's calm down a little.
He's
I have
got
no-
some
I have no
Shanahan
idea
vibes,
where
though.
you're
It
coming
is a
from that.
well-coached team. This is
I'm
a
not
little
saying
bit of
that's
Jets
an
jealousy
absurd
here.
sneak
It's
attack,
a little
like,
bit of
there's
Jets
no
jealousy.
Jets jealousy. There's no jealousy, anything. Just the drive-by on Zimmer with the Stefanski comment.
I'm just saying he's also probably the most handsome coach in the league. Just
Right,
throwing that out there.
You weren't going to get rid of Zimmer. How dare you?
let's move on. The NFC South coming up. I mean, Stefanski is handsome and on the rise.
Dan's not even looking at me when he says, let's move on. It's just like, I moved on.
NFC South up next on the broadcast. Welcome back to the broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. And remember, before we move on, the Around the NFL podcast, 4 times a week. The Sunday night flagship show where we cover every game. Tuesday, we should chop it up a little bit. Thursday, preview of all the games. Thursday night, we recap TNF.
Did it last night.
How about that? Scan that QR code.
Most
Bang
popular
that code.
NFL podcast of all time. I don't know if that's true, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, we've healed America. Let's get to the NFC South. Mark, start with the Saints.
The Saints, Jameis Winston, he is armed with 20/20 vision. His body looks tight. Suddenly he's a scrambling quarterback if he wishes to be, Greg. Has Sean Payton successfully reimagined and recreated Jameis Winston, or do you need to see more, Dan?
I feel like I'm the same guy in all these conversations with you, Mark, where I'm not convinced based on almost anything in week 1.
Wet blanket.
And I am. I feel like
you're
a wet
asking
blanket.
these big picture questions.
But he throws for 148 yards in this game. And I know he had 5 touchdowns, so the stat sheet's incredible and the fantasy output's amazing. But that was a bury the ball game for the Packers where everything went wrong and everything went right for the Bucs. For the Saints. I need to see what Jameis Winston looks like when the chips are down, when he's thrown an interception, when they fall behind, when in the past he's pressed and been kind of a maniac and killed his own team. Is that guy gone? I don't know yet. We haven't been tested yet.
No, we don't know that. I think the Panthers will be a good test. I think they're a good, young defense, creative. But that pass to Deontay Harris we just saw, I mean, that's 58 yards on a dime.
Never been the question with Jameis Winston. He's always been talented. That's why he's the #1 overall pick.
Here's the thing, though. He has always moved really well in the pocket. Like, that's, as a Tom Brady, fan and 05, that's what I think, is the #1 thing quarterbacks need to be able to do. I don't know if that's true, but Jameis Winston is excellent at it, and I think the lost weight is helping. I mean, he's
I do
moving
too. I
very
also
well.
think that the Peyton factor, I mean, he's just going to find a way to use quarterbacks really well, and it's a different situation. I mean, Winston had
He won games
Bruce
with
Arians
Teddy.
too.
He won games with Taysom. He
Right.
can win games with anyone.
And Sean Payton, yes, deserves all the credit in the world for building out this program and how they played in week 1. But, Jameis Winston, it's not like he's never had good coaching. Bruce Arians was his coach in his last
I
stop
agree
in
with you. I
Tampa.
agree with you. But I mean, something feels a little different here. But
The offensive line is
blanket on.
different.
You're not into it.
The offensive line.
Soak the blanket.
I keep throwing stuff at you. You're not into it.
Unfortunate wording there.
They have the they have the Panthers in week 2. So let's talk the Panthers. Welcome back, Christian McCaffrey. You are a towering badass. That's all I have to say. I mean, I watched him do whatever he wanted against the Jets for the most part. And I just think when you look at this Carolina offense and what they can do, if they can block up front, and they were pretty good in week 1, and you give Sam Darnold time and don't get him frazzled, with those wide receivers, you're going to be able to make plays on the outside and get downfield strikes. And then if you could just set the table from a passing standpoint, this guy's going to handle the rest. And you can have a top 10 offense with Sam Darnold, and it won't be because of Sam Darnold. It will be because of the running back.
Christian McCaffrey was the conversation all offseason, like, okay, Matt Rule is going to have Christian McCaffrey. But this is the first time Christian McCaffrey's ever had Matt Rule. And your boy, he just runs such a well-coached, like, sensible offense. He's going to put McCaffrey, I think, in a better position to succeed than he ever has before.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to 2019, McCaffrey had about a 75% run share of the offense and about a 24% receiving, and you don't have Curtis Samuel anymore. You can use him in every way, and I think it could reach those totals again. We've talked about, like, is there get to a point where you're using him too much? I don't worry about that. Just unleash him all over the place.
30 times a game is a little much.
But worry about that later, because you can't center the offense around Sam Darnold the same way you would another quarterback.
And I would say he's built different and not to worry about it, but he missed most of last year with injuries coming off a 2,000 all-purpose year. So it is something to keep an eye on. But he's one of those special guys. And I think that will be Matt Rule's biggest challenge is how do I know I need to employ him constantly in this offense, but how do I keep him from not having 500 touches by the end of the year? That's the biggest challenge that Rule has.
Sneaky great rivalry here. Panthers, Saints, they played a lot of great games over there. They played a great game early last year in New Orleans. I think it was Teddy who was starting that game. But you get the top 2 running backs for the next 5 years whenever these two teams play. Because to me, there's no one
starting a team. Do you want CMC or Kamara?
I'm taking Kamara.
Oh, CMC.
That was like major host work there. It's like you really are stepping up your game.
I haven't decided. I can't pick against Alvin because he scored 6 touchdowns in my fantasy championship last Christmas.
That's very fair.
So I can never say I'll pick the other guy. Moving on, Greg, the champs.
The most surprising part of week 1 for the champs was Gronk to me. Where was this Gronk? He was not here last year. I feel like the Rob Gronkowski of week 1 was like 5 years younger running routes. He's no longer going to be that guy in terms of his blocking ability. That's kind of what's fallen off, but he's moving well. He's winning on the outside against safeties and cornerbacks. If you get like 80 to 90% Gronk, like he could be a Pro Bowler, All-Pro again, as if this team like needed any more weapons. It's just, I don't know. As a Patriots fan, I kind of can't believe it. So he just would have stayed retired, the greatest tight end of all time, would have never given us these years?
I mean, he got healthy.
Blame Belichick.
Like Tom Brady, he's now in year 2 of this offense, looks so much more comfortable. He's with Tom Brady. He's probably much happier in Tampa Bay than he was in New England. He didn't have to spend the entire offseason rehabbing for the 18th time. I mean, it's some of the rehabs he went through. And I also think that anyone that decides, like, it's time just to take a year off from actually doing anything of physical or emotional toil, you come back refreshed. Look at Bruce Arians.
But to be clear, what do you do that's physically toiling now? Because you seem to be putting yourself into I could use a year off.
Beachbody?
You don't know everything that my body is, up to or what I do in general. So.
Let me come in with the wet blanket once again, doused in all sorts of liquids. I hope this is the Gronk we see all season, but he's going to get dinged up. Will he be moving the same way in week 8? But that's a minor quibble. The fact that he showed up looking like old Gronk is amazing. And let's also, and not old Gronk, let's also this offense is stupid. You have Gronk looking this way. You have Antonio Brown looking like an all-pro again. Chris Godwin. Mike Evans wasn't even a part of their plan in week 1. Tom Brady leading the charge looking better than ever. This is going to be a difficult team to knock off.
More big plays from Tom Brady. He's a different player. He's making more big-time throws than he did 5 or 6 years ago. Gio Bernard, your boy, I don't know. I don't see how they put up anything less than 44 points. That's my over for that.
40 on the reg.
Just Bucks.
All right. Now, I know Atlanta Falcons close out the division. I know that I have told you all episode long that I don't want to take too much out of week 1. And everybody step back, take a breath. Let's get above the treetops, as the corpos say on the third floor here. Open the kimono up here, though, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm worried about the Falcons.
Okay.
That week 1 did spook me. That I think it might not be too early to hit the panic button. The ultra rare, Greg, week 1 panic button, I'm banging it because I think this team could be a mess.
You would expect the offense would bounce back. I do. The defense, you just kind of don't see where the answers are. They don't have a pass rusher. They don't really have anyone in the secondary other than A.J. Terrell, but that's one guy. The offensive line was among the worst in the NFL. Matt Ryan's not going to make up for that. No, I don't think it's too early for worst-case scenarios.
I think last week was a
especially
bad
this week they're
matchup.
playing the Bucs.
No, I mean maybe every week's a bad matchup, but they played an Eagles team with staunch offensive and defensive lines, and that's the issue on both sides for the Falcons. But that's how you diagnose a 4-win team. They can't push anyone around.
Does anybody get the vibe with Matt Ryan? And again, 1 week. But remember the old days before every quarterback played awesome in their late 30s? Remember the old days, like the 90s and the 2000s, when a quarterback turned 36, 37, and he still looked like the superstar, the all-pro, but he's always peeling himself off the turf now, and his throws aren't quite as good as they used to be. Is Matt Ryan in for a traditional, Eli/Peyton decline? And if so, are we right around that time where it could happen?
What is he, 35? His arm strength was never his number 1 trait, but I think it's been diminished. He does not look like he has the same pop on his arm as he used to.
I want to go back and watch the first 2 drives from last week, and then everything fell apart. I'm going to give this another week. Now, this may not be the week where you're going to see it happen, but the Jets and Giants over the next 2 weeks as well, 3 weeks. So Arthur Smith, there's a little hope there. I mean, we haven't seen his full vision.
Yeah, and Arthur Smith deserves the benefit of the doubt, of course, as well, what he did in Tennessee. And Matt Ryan is 36. He turned 36 this spring. All right.
Ageism.
We move on.
That sounds young to us.
I did the power rankings. I do them every week. And these bozos, they dare to challenge me? Up next on the broadcast. Welcome back. You dare to challenge the old Zeusers power rankings? How dare you, Greg? Let's go.
So that's next level. You're talking third person while looking into the camera. And that's us. The Packers. You've been oh, well, it's only week 1. Let's not overreact to week 1. And you drop them 8 spots. I thought you're Mr. Moderation. That one game puts the MVP that far down in the rankings?
Answer that.
I am. I am Mr. Moderation. What do you want me to do? Leave them?
Now they're a borderline playoff team. You just went from, you won the MVP. Maybe they'll make the playoffs. Maybe they'll make the playoffs.
If I really were judging
they're
the Packers, 5
spots worse than the Ravens.
You ask a question, you got to let me answer.
I'm just going to answer.
No, that's not how it works with Greg.
If you are going to lose a game that way, if I were really just basing about just week 1, they'd be 32. They'd be the worst team in the league. So I'm not going to do that. So the fact that I only dropped them 8 spots should tell you.
They're 7 spots behind the Steelers, so you spent the whole offseason
Where would you put them, Greg? Give me a break.
Like 6 or 7.
I didn't bury the Steelers.
Not behind. I'm saying the Steelers would be below the Packers.
What is going on with you right now? You have to let me talk here. The Packers are going to be fine. Of course, I got to dock them. They got killed in their opener. But that number tells you, if you really do follow the power rankings, that's me saying, I got to ding you. You got to go to detention, but I think you'll be back.
You got dinged. I hear you on that. And it's, I think number 1, your list is very nice, Dan. But Cards at 14. I guess I'm wondering how you're doing because they looked like not better than the 14th best team in the league to me last week. So you're baking in a lot of preconceived notions and concepts.
What I do is with this, and this is nice because in a way it allows me to think about the power rankings in a different way as well. I don't just base everything off the standing. That's another common gripe I'll get on social media. Hey, how could this team be ahead of this team? They lost, they won. Calm down. That's the standings. That's those rankings. This is about what I feel about this team, not just what they did in week 1, but what I think they can do, what the vibe was around them going into the season, and now spinning forward. And I see the Cardinals, and this is why it's tough to be an Arizona football team right now. I think when the season ends, there is a hypothetical scenario where they are in the top, 12, 15 teams in the league.
I think so, too.
And they're still in the last in their division. I mean, it's a very strange setup right there. But that tells you if you're inside the 15, I see you as a fringy playoff team. And that's still where I see the Cardinals. They have the 9 or 10 win type ceiling.
I thought we did that without, battling each other. There was some civility to it.
A little bit of respect
on
both sides of the table.
Greg,
oh, yeah, like 7 spots below the Steelers, the Green Bay Packers.
All right. Coming up next on the broadcast, we move to the AFC, starting with the West. Oh, man, a lot of good divisions. I feel like the NFL is fun. My takeaway.
Football is back.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Hour 2, you thought you got rid of us, but you didn't, because we're just getting started here. Now the AFC West. Let's get cooking with Mark and the Chiefs.
So they've got Baltimore. And we just saw Derek Carr target Darren Waller 19 times in a totally crazy game plan. Little excessive. What would happen? What kind of havoc would be unleashed if Patrick Mahomes were to target his tight end, Travis Kelce, 19 times against Baltimore?
I think there'd be a lot of numbers for Travis Kelce. I think the Chiefs could do this like against a more easier defense. Like you could just start having fun with the season. Like if they play the Falcons, let's just throw it to Kelce 40 times and see what happens.
Well, that's the old Madden thing.
It worked last week almost for Kansas City.
Anyone that's played any type of football video game, if you're playing with the Chiefs and you're Mahomes, you will target Travis Kelce 20 times in the game, maybe 30 if you're that guy. I only throw it to him. And it makes you think, like, if we're having an actual conversation about this here, why wouldn't you always throw it to your best player and force them to make
it wasn't that efficient throwing it to Waller.
No, it didn't work that well. But last week at least, 273 of Mahomes' 337 yards went to Kelce and Hill. There is a question about their other weapons, I think, to some degree, if one of those guys went down.
There is, but we've been having this question for 3 years, and they've been the best offense in the league.
I know. I get it.
It's that, and also it's like, hey, they've really been working on the running game. I was banging that drum. Like, they showed a lot in the preseason. Where was that in week 1? Like, they haven't had any running game, and guess what? It doesn't matter. Like, you beat a Browns team that basically played a perfect offensive game until the end.
There will be one of these years that, in Mahomes' hopefully long career, where his skill players get decimated by injury and he'll have to do it by himself with a collection of backups. And we'll see. And guess what? I still think there'll be a really good offense when that happens because Mahomes is that special. But as long as you have Kelce and as long as you have Tyreek Hill, this is a 35 to 40 point offense.
And the Ravens haven't bothered them in previous years. He has dominated this matchup. He has dominated September. Like I would be curious to see them without one of those two guys. They would be a much different team. But we haven't seen that.
Greg, the Bolts.
The Bolts are a team I'm falling in love with again. Like I was a little worried this offseason with the coach hiring and whatnot, but
hand-wringing there.
I trust Justin Herbert so much, and I trust Brandon Staley so much. I'm just like asking, like, who would you trust more with your child? Because I just feel like they'd both be great options.
With my child?
Yeah, I'm just saying these are two of the most trustworthy. They seem like they have it all together. People in the NFL. Do you go young Herbert
or either fathers,
or a little older Staley?
Kind of surprised me this one. Are either actual fathers?
Well, I would say this, Greg. Well, Dan looks that up. The fatherhood scenario with Staley. Like, Herbert, to me, he's very young. He's just come out of college. He's got some wild oats to sow at some point.
More energy, though. Like, almost like you don't.
Yeah, but that's
it's kind of like the Daniel Jeremiah thing. You have 4 or 5 kids before you're 21, and like, hey, you managed to handle it.
Greg, it's not parental energy. It's a different type of energy. I mean, Brandon Staley would be my pick, except he's also in the facility like 70 hours a week. So what is the family female
scenario?
You
go with the head coach, unless it's like John Gruden or something.
But they're never there.
But Greg is fighting for us to answer to certain.
And I'll tell you this: I was once myself. It's fading into the deep distance now. But a 23-year-old guy, I don't want a 23-year-old guy anywhere near the responsibility of raising children.
Absolutely,
so that's the answer.
Absolutely.
Now,
he's very wholesome, though.
He is like a medical student, though. He's very sharp. I just feel like he could handle anything. He handles 2 different offenses with a plum.
Very smart. Very smart, just like you using a plum there. I like that. And let me just tell you this, and I think everybody needs to understand this after you watch Justin Herbert, after you watched him on Sunday.
Okay.
Justin Herbert.
Running out the clock here.
Is a savage in the pocket.
This is your new thing.
An absolute
It's
savage.
like, but you set it up like it's like this catchphrase that's going to change America.
Young and sweaty is working. This is
going to heal America.
We've heard that before. We've heard that savage in the pocket before.
That is something everyone needs to know. A savage. Speaking of John Gruden, speaking of the Raiders are Vegas. The Vegas is the Raiders.
I like that.
Well, maybe not the Vegas. Las Vegas is the Raiders. I'm going to enjoy following this team. And I know there might be a ceiling here. I don't think every game's going to be like Monday night either, where it's going to be like these classics that we'll remember in a decade. But I think there's a lot here to get behind from a fan experience standpoint. And I think Derek Carr is, a quasi bad boy. I think he's a guy that's going to, sometimes when he gets hot, he will take you places, especially when the game's on the line. He is, just like Justin Herbert, his heart rate never elevated. I think Carr really, although he's not a perfect quarterback, is a really fun one to watch, especially when the chips are down. I know the Raiders have trouble on defense, and that will continue to be an issue, but I think the Raiders are going to be a fun watch this season.
The Vegas thing works for them really well. The Chargers going to LA was really tough on San Diego, and those fans, a lot of them did not track the team to LA. But walk into any LA sports bar right now, it's still mostly Raiders jerseys.
We still get them locally. They are an LA team. They figured it out. They have 3 different markets all at once.
They will travel to Vegas, though, so there's not animosity the same way there were with some of these other moves. You don't have Browns fans going to Baltimore in the 90s.
I'm really fascinated to see them this week, though, because they were very different, I think, in week 1 than the 3 years we've seen with John Gruden. They went extreme pass heavy. They needed to. I think it was the way to go about that game. On defense, they played cover 3 the whole time, backed it up, actually looked competent, looked like they knew what they were doing. Maybe not great defense, but they had it together. They're just going to try to play safe. And the bombs away thing on offense, that is a very different approach. And if you can even look okay against the Steelers defense and protect, then I'll start believing in this.
I didn't buy in them in the first half. They looked like they had all the same problems they did a year ago, and then the second half.
I like the process.
The pass rush was really good with Max Crosby leading the way. So, listen, we thought they were like 8-5 last year, and I think the year before that too. There have been good vibes around Oakland and Vegas for a while, but can they take it through a whole season? We shall see. Let's move on. The Broncos. And, Greg, I feel like this one is for you. I think the schedule sets up Denver very well for the fight to come here, especially the first 2 weeks of the season. You got the Giants in week 1, who clearly were not ready, and now you have another very winnable week 2 matchup. And if you can get off to a 2-0 start, you can find your way to 10 wins in the playoffs.
You're right. My instinct was to push back because that's just my instinct in life.
Right. Just you're a pushback
guy. But I think because 2-0 on the road. 2-0 on the road is a little different to start your schedule. And I think it's something to keep an eye with this entire AFC West. They're playing the NFC East, a lot of winnable games there. They're playing the AFC South, a lot of winnable games there. I'm starting to regret not picking more wild card teams out of this AFC West, because after 1 week, I'm already feeling like the Broncos and the Chargers have to be feeling pretty good.
There's a world, Greg. In your perfect world, there are 44 wild card spots.
The AFC is really good. The AFC is really good. I had the Broncos in the playoffs.
Wait, Greg, you have made you've made that crystal clear to us.
Well, now it's so obvious that Dan's like, oh, you can't lock up the Broncos. They're too much of a juggernaut coming off 5-11 with Teddy Bridgewater.
This is the first week that they've had a winning record under Vic Fangio. It's been a rough path to get here, and I do believe in them. If you get last week's version of Teddy Bridgewater over and over, and that's sort of what they wanted, they can do a lot, and they are a wild card. It would be disappointing if they weren't a wild card team with their talent on offense and their defense. I mean, they're pretty balanced.
And Vic Fangio and Johnny Elway and everyone else in that organization should send flowers to the league office for the schedule. I mean, I don't want to hit it too hard here.
The Giants looked pretty competitive on the road on Thursday night. They did what they could. They beat a bad team. I'm just saying,
this is nice. At Giants, at Jaguars, home to Jets.
That's nice.
Okay, that is nice. I didn't know about that.
Pretty nice.
They are set up very well for the road.
Not set up well for you guys. I'm going to be honking about this if they're 3-0.
Heavens.
That sounds horrible.
Heavens.
All right.
Help us out.
Heavens. Like a 75-year-old Floridian?
I will be saying.
Coming up next, we talk AFC East. Can the Bills bounce back after some disappointing results in the opener? Welcome back to the broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. Now, the AFC East, and Mark will start with the defending division.
All right, I'd ask you this about the Bills. Last week, disappointing opening, a lot of mistakes for the Bills offense. Do you think you could use Pittsburgh's approach to that game if you're another NFL team to unspool them weekly, or is that a specific Pittsburgh versus Buffalo matchup?
I don't think so. What's the blueprint? Have T.J. Watt?
Well,
what did they do? They didn't do anything.
You hang back. You make Josh Allen do.
They just cooked them in every possible matchup up front. So if you have a great defensive line, that's great. But I'm surprised Buffalo was that bad up front. But Pittsburgh just might be that good, and I don't know if there's any other defensive line that can do that. So I don't know if it's a blueprint.
You got to give it up to Pittsburgh, and it was a huge eye opener to their potential because Buffalo. When you looked at their game plan, their whole thing was we're going to spread out our attack with our receivers 4 and 5 wide and just pick apart the secondary of Pittsburgh. And I guess in theory it made sense with Pittsburgh's personnel, but it didn't work because they showed up to play and they got the push up front. So if you can play like the Pittsburgh Steelers, a well-coached team with great personnel in the front and back end, yeah, you could slow the Bills, but I am not worried about the Bills. I think they are going to get right this week.
I think so too, but I think we're kind of seesawing into the everything's fine with Buffalo. I looked at their offensive line, and I know it was Pittsburgh, but that was not a clean performance. The Bills, I did, but I mean, so did 62% of America out of the AFC 2 weeks ago, so that wasn't original. I mean, I don't even know if they win that game, the Steelers, without the blocked punt also. Well, it was closer than perceived.
It was a close game, and if there's concern in Buffalo, it would be for the offensive line because it wasn't anything exotic like blitzes or anything. They just got beat by the front of the Steelers, but that's
be concerned if they struggle this week. Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll have owned this Dolphins defense, which is not easy to do. They throw a lot at you. They're not going to just sit back. They're going to blitz, and they've put up 30 points practically every time they played. Even when Josh Allen was throwing it all over the place, he was playing well against the Dolphins. Then I'd be concerned.
Speaking of the Dolphins, Greg.
Oh, yeah. Tua. It's a lot of Tua conversation this week. I guess my thought is, are we worried about Tua when he has to hold the ball? That's basically it. Like, if Buffalo employs a similar tactic to what Pittsburgh did against them last week, and they step back and they just make him hold the ball, does he have the goods to deliver? He's not going to have Will Fuller this week. Brian Flores being very mysterious.
Weird situation.
Not saying whether Fuller's going to return this year. He does have Jalen Waddle, though. He does have Myles Gaskin. Gaskin looked awesome last week, so I think they have more juice than usual. But I feel like Dolphins fans are getting a little sensitive about Tua.
He has 10 careers. He's made 10 career starts. So it's like, I know that because what has happened with Patrick Mahomes and a number of other quarterbacks that hit the scene, full speed, they need to see more from him. I think this is the most teamsiest team in the AFC. They just find so many different ways to win.
The teamsiest team?
They are. Because
it's
like the Dolphins want to win this season, I think, the way they did last week. In a tight game where you just have Tua not make mistakes. He has 3 touchdowns and 5 picks over his last 4 games. I mean, we need to see more production out of him, bigger plays, but I think that there's some patience here.
I think Dolphins fans are sensitive, but that's how it works when you have a rookie quarterback that doesn't have a great first year, because the fan base is so invested in a first-round pick quarterback, and I know this from experience, that you see some good things in that first year when everybody else says, oh, he was bad, and then you expect him to build on it. You get pumped up during a summer camp, a training camp, where the beat writers are saying all these great things, and then as soon as week 1 comes and something bad happens, it's like, oh, they're burying my quarterback who I still believe in. So it's a tough situation because you see a quarterback like Justin Herbert, for example, takes off for the skies immediately, and you're just not seeing that.
I think Dolphins fans think we could have had Justin Herbert, so that is adding to some of the
And
problems.
I'm not even talking long-term. I'm almost talking like the matchup right now. It really felt like he didn't know what he was seeing in terms of the Patriots coverage, and then he just held the ball. And there's a lot of good defensive coordinators right now in the AFC East, and that's the book on Tua. Like, if he doesn't get rid of the ball quickly, he's in trouble.
Patriots.
Your favorite team.
This Damian Harris hand-wringing this week. I mean, it is New England Patriots systemic nonsense that I just can't get past. Why? Listen, Damian Harris had a really good game and is by far the most talented player they have in their backfield. And sure enough, come Monday morning, Tuesday morning, we're reading the stories about how he is going to be downsized in the attack, and maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't against the Jets this week. But I just wish there wasn't such a small margin of error for running backs on the Patriot way. What you got to admit, Greg, it's a little silly that a guy can't make a mistake if you play running back in New England.
Let's let him actually be benched before we start criticizing them for it. He's not Jonas
But you
Gray.
read the stories too, because I know you read all the Patriot stuff. There's a lot of buzz about it.
There was some pushback. Yeah, you're right. There was a guy, Jonas Gray, I remember, that had the 200-yard game on Thursday Night Football. And as you would say, they buried him, I think, outside the Mass Turnpike at some point because he showed up late for a practice.
His iPhone died.
Like he never played again. Yeah. Our great friend Chris Wesseling was always very upset they never gave him another chance. Here's a difference that people sleep on with Belichick. He absolutely has different rules for different players. He absolutely treats his stars better or differently, like Stephon Gilmore. And Damian Harris is so talented, he's not going to sit Damian Harris. Damian Harris is going to play a ton because he's Damian Harris.
I hope you're
awesome.
right.
Well, some of this sitting the running back business is when you had Tom Brady at quarterback, too. You're not afforded that luxury right now. I think Belichick probably thinks he could get like Holly Hobby to run for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's like, I'm just saying, like that's been the Patriot way. The Jonas Gray, what thing was throw anyone in there and they're going to embarrass the opponent. But you've got Mac Jones at quarterback. You're not going to pull Damian Harris, or you shouldn't at least, with him in his second pro start.
And I won't bury the lead. I already did. It's too late, and you can't take it back, Greg. But the Mac Jones experience was very positive in Week 1.
It was great.
He looked really good. He's got a little Chad Pennington to him. Do you see that at all?
I'll take that. I'll take that. That would be
the accuracy, the touch. Obviously, a smart guy. I'm a little worried about Mac Jones as a Jets fan. Speaking of the Jets, hey, that offensive line needs to pull its weight. I'm not breaking news here, but you cannot. Joe Douglas, the GM, had made it a priority from the time he took that job. I will fix this offensive line because it all starts up front, and maybe the line will be okay. Mekhi Becton getting hurt and now being out for half the season is not going to help in that realm. But in general, to let Zach Wilson get hit 10 times, be hurried constantly, sacked 6 times, and I understand it's a rookie quarterback right there. That you probably can get out of that and throw to your hot route if you're a quarterback with more experience on that Brian Burns rush. But in general, they did not protect him well, and he will not survive. Forget about Week 18. He won't make it till October if he takes beatings like this every week. There is a lot of potential with this kid. We saw it in the second half, but you need to pull your weight up front or else.
Well, you've got to go heavy sets if you need to. You've got to find ways to protect him, anything you can. The good thing is he's not a Joe Flacco Stone Age pony who can't move. He is absolutely exciting outside of the pocket, and he could probably save some of the punishment himself, but he came out of that game acknowledging, honestly, to beat writers, I have neck issues. I came out with some neck discomfort. I mean, he got flattened in that thing, but he looked to me, the one thing about him, he is a tough, rugged quarterback. The coaches love him, but you cannot ask him to go 17 games behind a shoddy offensive line.
He is not afraid.
No.
I just am so impressed. He's going to learn what plays you can make and what plays you can't. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a similar thing that these are just different athletes. Get rid of the ball. I'm intrigued by this matchup because I wasn't impressed by the Patriots front last week. I thought they would be good this year. They weren't great in Week 1, and I wasn't impressed by the Jets' offensive line. Now they have to move George Fant over to left tackle, which is his natural position, they say. Morgan Moses plays right tackle. So you've got some pros. I've been tracking this Elijah Vera Tucker situation because they traded up for him, gave up a third-round pick for a guard that supposedly the Patriots were going to take, and then instead they take Mac Jones. And this is my corner. This is my sliding doors. It could change the AFC East.
It's all about Vera Tucker. Come on, Jets. You might have someone special. Be smart. Protect him. The boy who shall lead us. We move on. The AFC North is up next. Big Ben still looks like Big Ben. Are the Bengals different? Are the Bengals fun? Oh, my goodness. Let's get into it up next on the broadcast. Welcome back to the broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. All right, we move to the AFC North. Mark, I know it's a division that's very near and dear to your heart, so buckle up, buddy. Greg, we'll start with you, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, Melvin Ingram was my biggest revelation of week one because this is a guy back in San Diego and then a little bit in Los Angeles, but he was hurt there. That was a game wrecker. That, to me, like fires up his teammates just with the aggressiveness that he plays. And that number 8, there's something about him. It just makes him look tough. And you suddenly pair him with Highsmith and TJ Watt, and that's the best trio in the league. If they get a healthy Melvin Ingram, isn't this the type of like Steelers signing that haunts Mark?
We all called this one.
Like Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden is another one. It's like no one wanted Melvin Ingram, and then the Steelers just like pick him up off the scrap heap for nothing, and he dooms your child.
I mean, you say the Sessler household.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the large parts of my household are incredibly apathetic.
But it's all connected, though.
But like that, okay, it's just imagine it's a playoff game.
Oh, it's bugging me.
It's a rematch. Damashek's going nuts, and Ingram is the one that makes the difference.
You're right. No, there's a trickle-down effect there, no doubt about it. That would affect the rest of my household. The minute they signed him, we talked about it on our show. I was like, this is the kind of thing that just works for Pittsburgh. They used him all over the place last week. We talked about the Buffalo Bills and their holding issues, penalty-wise. Ingram caused some of those. So it's like you're absolutely right. He was the perfect piece for the Steelers, and of course they go and get him. Highly annoying.
If he stays healthy and upright, which was an issue later, as he's a little bit older now, maybe this becomes just one of those week one things that in week 16 we're like, oh, remember when we got super excited about Melvin Ingram? Or because the Steelers are run well and they know what they're doing, and they know how to best use their talent, he becomes a major piece for them. Bad news for the Browns equals bad news for Mark, which equals bad news for the rest of the Sesslers.
Right.
That's very true.
Wait, so they're not Browns fans,
No,
but they must be because they're just like, Daddy hasn't spoken in days,
I think that there are multiple issues. That may be just one of them. I'm not sure where else to go with that. Why am I saying that on this station?
Mommy, why hasn't Daddy blinked in 3 days? Mark, Ravens.
Well, so Cleveland gave KC a scare, but they had issues. They made mistakes down the stretch. I mean, you want to wonder what would have happened if you didn't have the Nick Chubb fumble and everything else that happened in that game. Do you trust this Ravens offense? I mean, Lamar Jackson had 2 killer fumbles of his own. Do you trust them to go into Kansas City and give them a scare as well? Or are we just looking at this game, thinking it's the game of the week, and it might not even be that close?
I trust them. I trust the Ravens.
Out of hand,
I think the Ravens, getting out of there with a win, is going to be different. But I think as much as we could say that was a disappointing about Lamar Jackson on Monday night with the turnovers, what he did with these scrambles, he's just unlike anyone else. And because of that, defenses cannot game plan. It's like what they said on the Monday Night Football telecast. They had Marcus Mariota run as Lamar Jackson in practice to try to prepare the Raiders for Lamar Jackson. But you can't prepare for him. So I think Jackson is going to make 5 to 10 big-time plays in this game that will keep Baltimore competitive. Can he avoid the turnovers? Because that's all it takes. There's no margin for arrogance.
No, I'm surprised I'm the Ravens hitting the panic button more than you guys. There's a lot going wrong with this team. They had to sit Tyson Williams late in that game, who I thought, okay, he's got some juice because he can't pass protect. He got Lamar hit a couple times. He doesn't seem to, be coordinated in terms of the mesh point. They haven't practiced that much. You're bringing guys off the street. Ronnie Stanley, their all-pro left tackle, may not play in this game, may not play for weeks, reportedly, because he's not healthy. The line was a mess. It feels like Lamar Jackson is going to have to put this entire organization on his back more than normal, and he's going to have to do it in Baltimore. The game is in Baltimore, in Charm City. You get that going on a little bit, but
that matters.
I don't know. Like they got blown out. They've been barely competitive against the Chiefs when everything's going right. I'm very worried about the Ravens.
This is a field goal game, Greg. You and we will talk on Sunday night, and you'll be like, Dan, you nailed it. I
hope you're right.
Well, or it's a 5-field goal game and they lose by 15 points.
Good nap.
Throwing that out there.
Greg on the Bengals.
Zach Taylor changed. You asked him. You said put on a face.
Got a face
in week one, and I think he had a face. It wasn't the 4th down calls, although I like that Zach Taylor goes for 4th and 1 on his own 30.
Yeah, that was a little wild.
That takes some stones, Zach Taylor. That's the type of team. No, it was the offense. I don't think they looked great, but they looked effective. They were totally different. Last year they were spread them out, let Joe Burrow make a play. This time it was hand the ball off. A little tighter formations, a lot of play action, one of the highest percentages in the league. Short passes, protecting a guy. It was very conservative, actually, for the most part, and I think they heard you. I think he's making his quarterback look better. That's what good coaches do.
I don't know where you heard it. They heard you, Dan. I mean, we've all been asking for this for months.
He said week one it was all about the face. He needs to earn the face.
Well, Mark wants a spotlight. Give it back.
No.
That's true. You have been talking about, he's got the polo shirt.
I've been saying, who is Zach Taylor for 2 seasons? And, I mean, it's been a tough chore for him to show anyone who he is. But you got a healthy Joe Burrow, and they were more aggressive. They looked spicy. They have an identity now, or at least they're building one, Dan.
Isn't that what you want from a coach? And this is just week one, but a guy that is smart and makes sensible decisions and is responsible. But then, like an Andy Reid, he'll sprinkle in something that makes him hard to figure out and hard to get a beat on. That's what Cincinnati did in that game. And some of those moves, like the fourth down move deep in their own territory, was madness. It was a stupid move.
14.
But I will give them the credit for that's belief in your system, belief in your quarterback. So just every week I come on, when I do power rankings, I go on Andrew Siciliano's NFL Now program, and I say in week 2, hey, Bengals fun now? And then he goes, Dan, enough of that. And we move on. But how about this year? It's different. How about this year Cincinnati's fun?
I want to throw up one caution flag. I thought Joe Burrow took 5 sacks in a game where he was protected pretty well. That pretty much when the pressure got there, he just kind of crumpled. And that was not the Joe Burrow that we saw last year. So that had me a little bit worried.
I love watching Joe Burrow play. I hope this goes well for him this year. Mark, Cleveland Browns, your boys.
I feel with the Browns, so many annoying narratives cling to them. A lot of it has to do with the Baker Mayfield thing. But now you hear people out there like, do the Browns have trouble closing games? And I'll just ask you this, because to get to the mountaintop, you're going to have to beat the Chiefs at one point. In 2 games in a row, the way they ended last year and the way they opened this year, they did have trouble closing games. But it was
that Ravens game. People base everything off primetime games,
right?
That's why.
Is it a real thing though? I mean, I think they're as aggressive as they.
That matters. Just because it's primetime and more people see it doesn't mean it's not a thing.
I'm trying to remember. They won a lot of games. I would need to see more. If you lose close games to Kansas City, that just makes you another NFL team. That's what every.
Then why are they constantly getting tracked with these hideous narratives? Because
why does it bother you so much? Like the Baker stuff
I'm a sports
really
fan.
on your.
Because I'm a sports fan.
No, the reason why because the last 2 games they played were both against the Chiefs and both were heartbreaking losses. I mean, I wish you would have closed out the game when Chad Henne was the quarterback for the Chiefs.
That would have been. I mean, it's 7 straight hours of Tony Romo, just going absolutely nuts over Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
You might right now have a replica of the Lombardi Trophy in your living room if you're able to beat Chad Henne in that spot. But we're moving past that. Yes, they didn't close that game. They didn't close Sunday, but it's very hard to close out the Chiefs with apex Patrick Mahomes doing that thing. So I don't think it's something to be concerned about. But it's just like any other sport, a team that's good, and I think the Browns are good. To get to great, you got to figure out how to win these games, and they haven't yet.
Well, their defense, that's how you close games, is you get a stop.
Right.
They didn't get. My mind is open to this defense being much different, certainly very different personnel-wise, and better. We got to see it. You got to go lay a hammer. It's a different situation for the Browns. You are expected to be a juggernaut. You're expected to blow the Texans out. It's no more poor sister Browns team.
Can't do that anymore.
You got to win by 20.
Poor sister.
I don't know.
Let me guess, by the way. Let me guess. Did David Clowney had a really strong PFF grade in week 1 but didn't have a sack?
Well, you're not wrong.
A lot of pressures. He's now pressuring from the middle.
What a pressure machine. It's time now for Health Check, presented by The Truth About Weight. Mark, let's stay on the Browns. Odell Beckham Jr., he's on the field week 1 ahead of the Chiefs game, working out. We don't know if he's going to play or not. Late scratch. Come Wednesday, he is scratched. So 5 days ahead of kickoff, are you concerned about this knee rehab now for Beckham?
Well, of course I'm concerned because in a best case scenario, he's out there in week 1 and he's productive and he's the big part of their offense. But you hear stuff that they are being cautious with him and they should be praised for that. That it's a long season. So I honestly, what is the reason to push him back in? Because have they not been fine without Odell Beckham to some degree?
I'm struggling to concentrate on Mark talking with these aggressive pushing. If he can survive that and the knee comes out of that, I feel like he's going to be fine long term. It's a concern, but I do think if he's not feeling 100% confident, which he must not be, it's smart to be cautious. Right now, it doesn't matter that much. Their offense is obviously great without him. This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations.
Beckham could be back in October and be the Beckham of old, and the Browns could have another big-time weapon. Or it could end up where it feels like it's trending, where after all that talk with the Giants and Browns, it was kind of a nothing burger trade.
I mean, I can remember a season where he didn't enter the fray until about week 5 or 6 and blew the league away.
His rookie season.
He's a different guy, though.
No, I understand.
I don't think that guy's coming back. That's just my hunch on this.
I'm just drawing a failed parallel for the most part. So
Could be right, though.
yeah.
What is he, 28?
It's not old.
He's not ancient. That was Health Check presented by The Truth About Weight, and we roll on the broadcast. The AFC South, tough start for the Colts in week 1. Jags, too. Man, the AFC South had a bad week. We'll talk about it up next on the broadcast. We're back here on the broadcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. And remember, you know us perhaps from the Around the NFL podcast, which you can get 4 times a week. Bang that QR code right there if you want to check out the show. Let's move to the AFC South. Let's start with the Titans. And I'm going to say it again. That ultra rare week 1 panic button. Bang it for the Titans.
You are.
That was bad. That was a rough performance by the entire team.
Not in this division. Like, the Texans are in first place. The Colts look good. The Jaguars. I mean, the Titans have done this before, haven't they? Where they start out the season not looking so great and they get it together. Almost like a Patriots, type of team that they're better in December than they are at the beginning.
I mean, it was their worst loss in years. And it was without Arthur Smith, which I think leaves questions about your new play caller and Todd Downing. I mean, it matters you have an offensive coordinator that can, figure your situation out in quarters, get you out of fixes, and that's not proven. And I don't like what happened with Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill looked a little lost. I mean, Taylor Lewan, who you think you can rely on, got eaten up. So, I mean, it can't get much worse.
The pass rush was bad, too. The defense was rough.
Right. Are the Titans panicking? I think you're not built to do that. You got to just data wipe it and move on.
There's something about it happening at home, too. Like, a week 1 game can get away from you on the road every once in a while, and then you're just like, oh, well, that didn't go the way we wanted it to. But for it to happen at home in front of your 75,000 fans, it's like, oh, how were we not prepared in this game? That was troubling to me. But I have legitimate. I am actually smashing the panic on the Falcons.
Wow.
I'm not smashing it on the Titans because there's too much talent here still, and I think they figure things out. They have a tough week 2 game. Buffalo, right?
No, in Seattle.
In Seattle, excuse me. So you have a tough game there, too. But I would not be surprised if they go up there, and that is a very close game. And the Titans maybe get out of there with the win. I can see it.
I think they'll be competitive. I'm a little worried about their defense, which I thought would be better. Certainly didn't look that way. Their pass rush wasn't great. But, like, week one's not too early to, like, push some panic buttons. Like, I'm pushing the panic button on this seating arrangement. You know, Mark made a power move. When, you know, it's going to change like the next decade, hopefully, of our lives, where he was like, no, I'm taking the end. I was like, well, that's where I used to sit.
What are you suggesting?
And now I'm going back and forth. It's a disaster.
What are you suggesting, that you're going to suddenly sit here?
I'm
That's
hitting
what
it.
the power move is.
I'm in trouble.
All right, let's just, as a recap, it's an industry term, power chair, facing my producer, Jason Brooksby, and everyone else.
Yeah.
These are just chairs. You
Right.
guys got to work it out.
But
I don't
you
know.
you kind of want to be the guy on the end. You want to be the Barkley. I'm bringing the energy. That I was sort of on the side before. And so that 10-second interaction where it's like, do I push back on Mark with this, or I don't know.
You're saying he doesn't have Barkley in him.
He's pretty aggravated. I'm not going to do it.
Well,
I'm in the middle.
And it's sitting. It's right over there.
I
on camera.
signed up. I signed up
Give me a
for
break
like
with this
7
guy.
more years
Greg,
of this. Or
Greg
something.
simply never stops talking.
What if there's
never stops talking?
We should have a stool in the corner with a dunce cap. That would be nice. All right.
I know who's sitting there too.
Colts.
Love him.
Can the Colts bounce back offensive line style from a dreadful Week 1 performance? I think they can. I think they bounce back style. I think the Colts can. I think the Colts are going to be all right. I thought going into Week 1 that there was going to be a process to get the offense ramped up, and we saw that. I guess the surprise to me, Greg, was it wasn't Carson Wentz that was the problem. It was kind of everything else around him.
I have a theory with offensive lines that I bring out every season at least once. They're like bullpens. They're the most important things, and even when they look great on paper together, sometimes they just fall apart, and you don't even know why. Now, the Colts have been good for a while, but you think about not having a left tackle. Suddenly you have Julian Davenport out there. Maybe you have Eric Fisher coming back from an Achilles at some point. You will, but Davenport's a problem. And then there's some decline elsewhere. Just because you have the same group together forever doesn't mean they're. And if the offensive line isn't great, this team isn't great. Like, this is a team I don't trust unless the offensive line is good.
Braden Smith didn't play especially well. He got hurt. I mean, they've been through a lot. I mean, they didn't have that full, uninterrupted.
Ryan Kelly was hurt during the preseason too.
Right, just very little time together. Although they've had time together in the past, but not with their quarterback. And we're still seeing what we need more from Carson Wentz. They had no big plays last week. Who scares you on this offense? I think that they can be methodical. They want to run the ball a ton and throw the ball to running backs. But this is 2021. You need to be a little more dynamic than that.
Jonathan Taylor can be a superstar running back for them.
Sure.
He's scary, but he needs help. And I like the bullpen analogy, because with a bullpen, what you have when the season starts and where it ends, it's never going to be that way. There's attrition that takes place, and you need to have depth. You need to have organizational depth. You have a Rivera-like closer with Quentin Nelson at guard, but you need to build around him.
I like that.
You can't leave him on an island to do everything, because a guard can only do what a guard can do.
You know how to make your offensive line look bad? Trade for Carson Wentz. That's how your offensive line ends up looking bad usually.
See, I went out of my way to try to set it up that it wasn't Carson Wentz's fault.
But he does.
Turns out it was Carson Wentz's fault, according to Greg. Greg, how about Houston?
I love
only team that won.
I love the Tyrod Taylor revenge game. Little under the radar here. Returning to Cleveland, everyone kind of gave up on Tyrod Taylor after that one bad start he had against Jacksonville in prime time. And then Mark Sessler was like, "Oh, every year they tell us that Tyrod Taylor is going to be fine." I don't know. I
love you guys sitting next to each other.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Tyrod Taylor revenge game against the
Cleveland.
Browns.
So go show them that you gave up on us too quickly.
Here's who I want to get revenge on: an organization that gave me millions of dollars to unfurl 85 pass attempts and get outshined by our rookie quarterback. Like Tyrod Taylor.
Look at this
treat
throw,
him with more kid gloves.
Look at this. There's no kid gloves.
Greg, can you calm down?
I just mean for week one, he was great. You can't deny how well he played. He's a professional
I'm
quarterback.
not denying it. I'm denying the idea that he's going into Cleveland with a sense of revenge. I mean, they couldn't have been more supportive of him. He just got outplayed.
I guess my thought
it's absurd.
My thought is more like, if the Texans are up 3 in the fourth quarter and Tyrod Taylor is playing well, tell me that's not going to drive you crazy.
Well, of course it would annoy. You're asking, would that annoy me as a Browns fan? Yes, it would annoy me. I mean, or what's so stunning?
I don't think
about
that'll happen,
yeah.
to be fair.
Tyrod, is it Tyrod? Haven't we struggled with this for
And then
years?
he was
that.
kind of like, yeah, don't bother. It's,
Anyway,
that
Taylor,
was confusing.
he's always been who he is. He's fine. He's good. He's actually a perfect guy in this madness around the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson, that you could plug in a professional that's going to know the offense and the team respects him. That's very good. I won't go as far as revenge game, though. I don't know
I mean,
about
revenge
this one.
games, there are very few.
How about
that actually-
revenge on sort of the cognoscenti that just sort of gave up on him, and he almost became this joke when really he had incredibly tough luck. Of course, with the Chargers, the medical mistake that they made, but also in Cleveland, it's a number 1 overall pick.
I think the whole Houston Texans feel that way.
Isn't the NFL weird though, like that? Like he played against the number 1 overall pick last week, and he was obviously better. Now, what if he does it again against another number 1 overall pick?
How about
We'll see.
Jadeveon Clowney revenge game on the Texans? He's going to get easily 2 to 4 hurries in that game potentially.
I don't know what he did to
This
you.
is my favorite corner.
I don't know what happened between you two.
Finally, Mark, the Jaguars. Tough week 1.
Here's the thing with the Jaguars. I will just ask you this quick. Tell me, what is this team's identity? They already are being tracked by, hideous comments of the coach wanting to leave like a fortnight into his run with the team.
Reports, unverified
I know.
Bad
It's
reports.
I'm just saying there seems to be weird energy, but you can't tell me their identity is bad energy. What are they? Or maybe they're identity free.
All right. So there's a lot of negative buzz around the Urban Meyer era so far. But it's early and they don't have an identity yet. But of course they don't have an identity because they went 1-15 last year. They fired everybody, brought in a new team architect and coach, and a brand new quarterback. I think it's going to take some time. I think I was surprised in week 1 that they would be borderline uncompetitive against a Houston team that might be a little bit better than a lot of us gave them credit to be. But they don't have an identity yet, but I think that's okay because that's part of the reboot.
I would say this, like the Andrew Luck rookie team had an identity. I mean, it's easy to say it's fine not to have one, but plenty of teams.
But he had a better team around.
That's a fun comp, though. That team was bad.
They weren't good the year before.
That was the year we started this QB index on the NFL. I was tracking these rookies every week. He was terrible week 1. And I think actually that is their identity. It's Trevor Lawrence. And
Gotta be.
For every terrible throw he made, and he made some bad decisions, looked a little lost, he made some beauties. And so I kind of think he's going to have weeks where he is incredible. Like, if you told me he goes 304 this week and they upset the Broncos, I just don't think that's that shocking. The worry with Urban Meyer is the coaching staff around him. I don't know if he's surrounded himself with like an A-list of assistants.
And he, unless he walks out, he'll have time to build this thing. It's going to be a process, but I think if you get to the end of December, it should be, yes, Trevor Lawrence is the face of this team. They win and lose and contend and get blown out based on how he plays week to week, and then they kind of figure things out as they go along. He is a special prospect. So
Just got buzzed.
breathe, let it breathe. Moving on. We did the power rankings over in the NFC, and you guys brought some heat toward me. I doused it with a wet blanket.
Suspect.
We do it on the AFC side next. So blanket. Welcome back. Listen, power rankings. Nailed it. Do it every week. But you guys say I got some things wrong in the AFC. Who wants to start?
I mean, talk about the power chair. We're just talking about the old power rankings. It's the Steelers. The Steelers number 5.
Yeah.
You're Mr. Don't overreact to week 1. Again, I'm going to make sort of the same point.
Okay.
They got outgained by 120 yards.
Oh, stop.
And Ben Roethlisberger looked exactly like he did a year ago, which I nicknamed him Big Breeze a year ago because just kind of looks like the elder Drew Brees. So I don't see them as too
well,
different.
you've been dying for Big Ben and the Steelers to fall off for a while now. It's just not happening yet. This moving up 5 from 10. That just is a reminder that I nailed it because everyone was writing off the Steelers all off season. I never thought that to be the case. I stuck him at number 10 to start, and I feel great about him. And by the way, I know Big Ben.
Number 5 is a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
I think they are. I think they can be. And Big Ben, yes, he's not the same guy as he used to be, but 4 straight scoring drives in the second half in Buffalo.
I'll piggyback it off with the AFC North because you've got the Ravens second down after the Steelers in that division, and then you have the Browns third. And I'm not coming at it from a Cleveland thing, but do you really see Cleveland as the 3rd best team in that division after what we saw them almost do against the Chiefs? Do you trust that Pittsburgh would have gone in and had any chance against Kansas City?
I could have moved them up a spot ahead of the Ravens. The Ravens are 7 and the Browns are 8. So
well,
we're
just
picking nits here.
I kind of go in Steelers angle a little bit too.
But the Steelers are where they are. Just live with it. They're still here, and they're not going anywhere.
I think the Browns are the best team in the AFC North, Mark. Just for you to know.
That was a showing of respect, Mark, to your Brownies. I know it's been a tough week for you, but they lost, and they didn't move out of the top 10. They didn't move at all. Most teams lose a game, they drop. I said, Browns, I still feel good. They are big-time AFC.
3rd best team in the division. I'm not sure that a 3rd best team in that division makes the playoffs.
They were in 3rd place last year.
I think they've improved.
Exactly the same place.
We'll see.
We shall see. we shall see. All right. We close the program out. I mean, I feel like you guys got to come harder at me. Take me down with the PR.
It's very hard. You're in this power chair. We're just children. We have no power at all.
we close out with weekend vibes. Weekend vibes time. We're about to get nuts this weekend, dad style. But before that, let's talk about what we got going on.
I'll start off. I just want to make an audible, and I'm going to make mine an apology to Mark. I just feel like I was
really?
too hard on Mark in this episode.
Which time?
I didn't sleep well last night. You know, I was excited. A couple big shows on the network for the first time. I feel like it was too hard. I'm sorry. I want this to be a positive, productive season.
You're a real gentleman. You're a real gentleman, and I accept whatever version of an apology that was.
No, this is genuine.
I believe it was, and that takes us into the weekend in a nice way.
From where I sit in the power chair, I like this, how we're ending here.
Right, it's just your two subordinates doing whatever you say. That's all that it bakes down to. Here is mine, and we can bring up this tweet perhaps. I am going to not have someone else tell me about the narrative of this situation. I am trying to make a new friend. We've moved into the Rams complex. I tweeted this out the other night. I'd like to become friends with Matthew Stafford. You know, see him around the commissary, have him come visit the cubicle, talk shop, maybe help him move if he's moving, Dan. That's what a real friend does, and I offer that to him, just as Greg did to me.
Wow, a lot of olive branches.
Yes.
And since we're going down that road as a Jets fan, Tom Brady and I, we should be in a really bad place after all the misery he inflicted upon me and my family. But I'm not. I'm happy to watch Tom Brady thrive now into his mid-40s. And he said in this talk thing he did with Gronk on social media that, I think I could play till 50. And guess what? That is not at all an absurd notion at this point.
It is absurd.
Why?
I don't know, because he's already the oldest quarterback who's ever started a game.
Doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Well, maybe like one hit at some point. I hope it doesn't happen.
Too much work.
He is having a
rules.
second peak, a fifth peak.
Tom Brady playing quarterback at 50. It can happen. Thank you for watching the broadcast. Enjoy all the games on Sunday. We'll see you next week.